Hello and welcome to Teenagers Untangled, the audio hub for parents going through the teenage years. I'm Rachel Richards, trained parenting coach, mother of 2 teenagers and 2 bonus daughters.
Hi there, I'm Susie Asley, mindfulness coach, mindful therapist and musician, and mother of 3 teenagers. 2 of them are twins.
Susie, can you tell when someone's emotionally intelligent?
Yes.
Any tips on how?
Well, it can take a while to reveal itself.
Okay. Well, we will be talking about this today. Betty has written to us about her twins, who she thinks may benefit from developing their emotional intelligence. I love this topic. I jumped at it as soon as she mentioned it. We'll look at why twins might be slightly different, what emotional intelligence is and why it matters, and then some tips for how you can help your teen develop theirs. Yeah. So let's have a look at this review that we have.
I have a lovely 5-star review here called "So Glad I Found This Podcast, Spread the Word." Hi ladies, I started listening to your podcast a while ago and I think I've listened to all episodes, some twice. Wow. And I really feel like you are helping me through this exceptionally trickery time with my teens. Your advice is practical and realistic and every episode has some golden tips to help me cope. Last week, I encountered some discussion about alcohol in my 14-year-old daughter's group, and following a quick recap on your podcast discussing alcohol, I feel I coped with it in a much more positive manner than if I had not heard you both discuss it. And thankfully, she seems to have taken your advice. 1,000 thank yous. Wow, thank you so much.
And I love those sorts of reviews because when our listeners give us specifics about how they've used the podcast, it's really helpful for others, I think, to sort of go, I could do that.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, some listeners have actually even, marked places in an episode and got their teenagers to listen because they go, it's easier if you say it than if I say it. So there are all sorts of ways that they can be used.
Amazing.
Great. It's really lovely feedback. Thank you so much. Yeah. Do you have a nugget for us?
I do. Mine is kind of an idea that I read years ago, and I can't remember where I read it, and I really wish I could find it again. I've tried to look it up since, but I've used it pretty much every day since.
Wow.
And it's this idea of push-pull. So in a relationship, you have the idea is that there's often one who's doing the pushing and one of them doing the pulling. And, this idea, maybe in a romantic relationship where you've got one who's maybe a little bit more needy or needs a bit more attention for whatever reason. That's not in a judgmental way, it's just how it is. And they go towards the other one more and the other one goes, whoa, that's too much, and backs off. And then the more they back off, the more the other one runs towards until they go, would you just leave me alone? Yes. And the other one's going, do you hate me?
Yes.
So that dynamic plays out. And once you start understanding this concept, you see it everywhere. So what is the ideal is if the one who's going towards the other one, pushing, can go, oh yeah, maybe I can just take care of myself for a moment and pull back a bit.
Yes.
And then the other one goes, where
Wait.
did you go?
Yes.
Oh, I need you. And then it kind of rebalances, and it's a little bit of a dance, but it can become very toxic if you're not aware. And that is really relevant with our teenagers. It happens all the time.
That.
And often I've seen so many times, particularly maybe for mothers, pushing, needing, and teenagers, as we know, are in a stage where they want to pull away. And the more we go towards them, the more they go, back off, mum, go away, leave me alone, slam the door.
Yes.
And if we can just let them pull away, and let them, even though we're going, I really don't want to do this, and it's uncomfortable to sit in that space, then they go, oh, where are you, mum? Where are you, mum? Where are you, mum? And
I
come back.
love that.
And then it's much more of a good dynamic. And it's just I think with my son going away to university, it's just reminded me again, and that is, a sort of a physical push-pull because he's literally physically gone. But it appears pretty much every day at home as well. It's in any dynamic. It's quite fun to play with as well.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be aware of. And I think a lot of us, I've seen so many people, and I think a lot of us really struggle with this sense of, I'm losing.
Yeah, and the opposite.
And this feeling that it will stay that way.
Yeah, and the opposite of, of letting go isn't completely letting go. It's not black and white, so we can let them go.
Yes,
but I'm still here, and I'm still here, and I still have boundaries, and then they will come back, even if it's just like for dinner time. It appears in all relationships at all moments.
No, I love that. I think that's really, really helpful. The nugget I have for this week actually relates to a big story we've had in the UK about a man called Russell Brand. Now, when you're not in the UK, you may not be aware of any of this. I'm not really interested in getting involved in a trial by media, but I thought it's a really interesting one to reflect on one of the allegations because it relates to today's topic. And at the age of 30, Brand is accused of having dated a 16-year-old girl. And this involved sending a car, allegedly, to her school to collect her. Mm-hmm. And it's alleged that her mother desperately tried to stop the relationship and took away her phone, grounded her. But the girl claims he coached her in how to get around those restrictions. This is kind of what you call grooming.
Yeah.
And which we will talk about in a future episode. Grooming, that is. The only reason I wanted to mention this is because I have a 16-year-old girl who I would say is at the high end of intellectual and emotional functioning for that age. Mm-hmm. And yet when we talk about relationships, whether it's friendships or romantic, she often feels unable to pinpoint at all what she's really feeling or thinking.
Yeah, completely normal.
Completely normal. And it's made a really good platform for talking to my girls about their relationships. When they complain about their friends doing things they don't like, or, oh, she did this, and or boys who can't explain why they're doing something or how they feel. I've said, well, maybe they just don't know. Mm-hmm. Maybe have we thought about that? And that being able to pinpoint how you really feel is so hard. And this is something that we are going to talk about today. And it's normal.
It's totally normal, and we'll talk about it more in the episode. It's really great platform to talk about it. We go through our heads most of the time, don't we? It's all in our analytical minds, but there are other ways too.
Yes. So Betty has written to us about her twins. They've started sixth form this year. She says she has a good, friendly relationship with them. They talk a lot. There's no real big problem there. But she says she feels sometimes they lack emotional intelligence. So they don't really talk about how they feel. They don't ask others how they feel. And she's asked us to do an episode looking at how we teach teenagers emotional intelligence and, how to talk about their feelings. Now, I love this subject. I think really we've touched on feelings quite a few times.
Yeah.
Anxiety, self-harm, and being able to express your feelings is really important, but it's also really, really hard.
Really hard, yeah.
So the term emotional intelligence, do you know where that came from?
No.
Okay, so there were two researchers, Peter Savoy and John Mayer, wrote an article, Emotional Intelligence, in the journal Imagination, Cognition and Personality in 1990. And it was later popularized by Dan Goleman in his 95 book, Emotional Intelligence. And it's defined as the ability to understand and manage your emotions, as well as recognizing and influencing the emotions of people around you. So Daniel Goleman's book, Emotional Intelligence, actually said why it can matter more than IQ. So he claims it's more important than IQ.
Yes.
And this is a source of debate amongst psychologists. So I'm not going to say it's clear cut, but it does look as if emotional intelligence could be quite a big factor in
huge
life success. Yes.
Absolutely massive. I agree with him.
Yeah. And actually they thought, well, here's the missing piece, because up until that point, when emotional intelligence first appeared to the masses, it served as that missing link.
Yeah.
Because people with average IQs seem to be outperforming those with the IQs that were the highest 70% of the time. I don't know where these numbers come from, but and it was an anomaly that they couldn't really figure out.
And can you actually separate them? I'm thinking they overlap massively.
So they do IQ tests, right? Yeah. There is an IQ test. My father scored exceptionally highly on IQ tests, but he just didn't have really any emotional intelligence.
And that's quite common, I think, if you have very high IQ.
So I think this is what they're trying to get at, okay?
But they can overlap as well.
They can overlap, yeah.
Maybe the other way, maybe if you're emotionally intelligent. Because otherwise, if you're not emotionally intelligent, like if you've got lots of stuff going on, it gets in the way of your IQ as well. Yeah, it gets in the way of your thinking capacity.
True, yes. Anyway, before we talk about emotional intelligence, I want to touch on the daughters of Betty. It's relevant because they're twins. She says she hasn't tested their DNA. They're taking different subjects in school, but they can open each other's phones with their fingerprints. So that's how close, in terms of DNA. They're not fraternal. They are two girls, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was important because, and you've got twins, so we'll move on to that. But Barbara Klein, who's a twin herself and author of Not All Twins Are Alike, actually says twins and triplets are born married and share a special way of communicating both verbally and non-verbally. Twins understand each other without words and think other people will be able to understand them in the same way that their twin does.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's talking about identical twins, so I'm sure.
Yes, she must be.
And that can then have a knock-on effect for twins when they are trying to form relationships with other people, because it's not something they've had to experience. They've had somebody who completely understands them. This is her position. So, Susie, you have twins, but they're fraternal. And they're really different.
They're really different. They did used to have a little funny language when they were little, which was hilarious.
Oh, I love
and they'd do
that.
funny little drawings and then go, and they'd be talking and I'd go, what are you doing? It's amazing. But they're very different, so they don't have that experience. But I'm really curious about how the daughters experience it, because I think sometimes we have, and I don't know any more about this lady it's a really interesting question. Thanking her for it. How they experience it, because sometimes we can have ideas as to how we think things should look, and maybe the girls are finding it a problem as well. I don't know if she says that, but maybe they're not. Maybe it's her own. But whatever, it's a fascinating topic.
Well, the sort of, is it true? Like, I'm seeing this, but is it actually a problem, or is it something that just concerns me?
Or is it a fear I'm having that they should be better at this? I'm fearing for their future and their relationships, or is it actually a problem right in the now?
But that's why these podcasts help, because quite often, even if you have 2, 4, whatever children, you only know your real own experience, and you might be looking at others that are presenting something that looks ideal, and then you think, well, we're falling short. So it's really helpful to hear that this is normal.
Absolutely. And it's a common thing, isn't it?
Yes.
My kids can't tell me how they feel. They won't tell me how they feel. They just go and say, day was fine, thanks, mum. But don't actually say how they feel. I think the quickest way and the best way to getting your kids to be emotionally intelligent is, as in many things, modelling it.
Yes, absolutely.
Model. They do what you do, and they might not be able to do it immediately, but they will. It will suddenly pop out. I've seen it in mine, because I'm banging on about feelings all the time until they don't want to hear anymore. Probably the other way of the other end of the spectrum. And then suddenly I hear them going, oh, how do you feel about that? To somebody, and I go, oh my God, it's gone through, because I'm modelling. I've never had a conversation with them about how to be emotionally intelligent ever. I wouldn't know what to say in that.
You're spot on, and that's one of the ones that is highlighted as important. No, it's absolutely spot on. There's a man called Dr. Travis Bradbury who wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0, co-founder of a company called Talent Smart, which is a consultancy that he claims serves 75% of Fortune 500 companies and gives them emotional intelligence tests and training. He says decades of research now point to emotional intelligence as being the critical factor that sets star performers apart from the rest of the pack. Jack Welch is quoted as saying, no doubt emotional intelligence is more rare than book smarts, but my experience says it's actually more important in the making of a leader. You just can't ignore it.
No, and any leadership research, in a company or any leadership role, it's empathy that matters the most.
Yeah,
Leading
absolutely.
With empathy, you have to have emotional intelligence, and that can be measured statistically. You're a better leader.
Mm-hmm. And despite the significance of it, it's actually intangible. It's quite hard to test. So Dr. Bradbury has he has this test that he used, and he's got data from 1 million plus people in the tests he's been doing.
Good big
Which I thought was actually
quite a lot
worth listening to. So, and he wrote a piece in Forbes about how do you know if someone's emotionally intelligent? So, you have a robust emotional vocabulary. So,
yes,
do you say, oh, I just feel bad, or do you say, I'm frustrated, I'm downtrodden, I'm anxious? The more words that you have to explain what it is you're feeling, the better your level of emotional intelligence. I've actually, and this is one of the tips, is I have found, if you look online, there are emotional word wheels.
Yeah, there's a massive list of them.
Yes. And I looked at the list,
Yeah.
I looked at the wheel, I thought the wheel was quite useful because it sort of happy, sad feelings. And then,
doesn't it?
It groups them. And then you can kind of, work your way out from wherever it is you're feeling. And I thought, actually, I've bought one. Because I thought, what a great thing to have.
Good.
We can put it in the loo downstairs and people can just scan it and think, oh, yeah, I'm feeling that right now. And just those words.
Or just a little bit.
Yes. Well, I've used joyous recently and it sounded like it was out of context. But the other person said, yeah, no, that's it. Same. Okay.
Yeah, nuancing it is really, really lovely.
Exactly. Are you curious about people? So people who are curious about other people, emotionally intelligent people, are very curious about other people, because the more you care about other people and what they're going through, the more it's going to improve your empathy.
Yeah. I have a theory that to be emotionally intelligent, you have to be fairly regulated. You have to be quite grounded and have regulated your own nervous system and be quite comfortable and balanced. Not completely 100% because nobody is, but you have to be, because if you're not, then your stuff, and then that links to what you've just said, because if you are busy with your own stuff, which, we have phases in our life where we are, you don't have the capacity to worry about other people. You just can't. So you're not able to show empathy to others because your own stuff is simply in the way. To have emotional intelligence, you have to have a certain amount of, I'm all right, I'm okay, I can manage this. Because otherwise you're just reactive and pinging, and you're probably in fight, flight, freeze a bit of the time as well. And
that can ebb and flow.
Absolutely.
So if you witness
100%.
a lack of empathy at some point, that could just be that, particularly with our teenagers, they're really overwhelmed by the amount of things that are required
100%.
of them.
100%. And we see, and the world revolves around them because that's the stage of life they're in. It's meant to. They think everything is personal and everything affects them. Everything that happens is because of them and due to them.
Yes.
And it's not. And we get older and realise that, there are other people in the world. Yeah, and maybe they're stressing over an exam and they seem super selfish or cold or cut off. They're not. They're just overwhelmed.
Yeah. And you embrace change. So emotionally intelligent people are flexible and they're constantly adapting. They know that the fear of change can be paralyzing and but it also is a major threat to their success and happiness. So it's this ability to look at something and think, I'm going to have to adapt. Coming back to what you've said in the past about how life is constantly changing and being able to accept and embrace that takes a level of emotional intelligence that it takes time to develop.
And courage, because it's terrifying.
Yes. You are difficult to offend. So this is an interesting one because I have become really hard to offend. And I always say to people, really, it's going to be very difficult to offend me. And I think part of that is just maturity, is where you start to get to the point where you've done all the work on yourself and you know really how bad you are at things. And that's okay. So if someone levels it at you, you just think, oh, well, fair point.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And it relates back to the teenagers take everything personally because they think the world revolves around them. And as you get older and you mature, you go, oh, it's not all about me and it's not personal. It's their stuff.
Yes. And so if you have a clear grasp of who you are, how you feel, it's harder for people to really goad you.
And we can coach our kids in that, like I think you've come with a couple of examples, oh, so-and-so was mean to me. Oh, maybe they've got something going on at home. Maybe they're struggling with something else. It's not just about you. And you can kind of introduce those kinds of ideas so they start to take things less personally.
Yeah. And as part of that, sort of underpinning all of that is, your strengths and weaknesses. You're able to say, actually, I'm not very good at that. And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. Yeah.
And I'm really good at this. Yes, and that's so, that's a good thing to talk about and to be proud of.
Yeah.
People who are emotionally intelligent tend to be able to let go of mistakes.
Yes.
So it's not who they are, it's something they did. We talk about this a lot. Yes. You can say you're not stupid, you just did something that seemed stupid.
Yeah,
that's
you chose
different.
A behaviour that wasn't good and that's not who you are, it's just what you did.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm struggling a little bit with the title, I think, emotional intelligence, because it kind of implies, and maybe I'm hearing it wrong, that it's something we're born with or not born with, and it's not. It's something you can absolutely develop and grow.
Yes, and that's the fantastic news, is that you can actually develop this, and we're going to come on to how you do that. But it's unlike IQ, which they think is pretty fixed. I mean, you can nudge it a little bit, but basically that's what you've got. Emotional intelligence. We can build this. This is a good one to focus. So it's actually, as a parent, it's a good one to be thinking about and focusing on, right?
Unless you're a psychopath, maybe.
Interestingly, one of them was you don't seek perfection. Emotionally intelligent people don't set perfection as their target because they know it doesn't exist.
Yes. Again, it's one thing knowing academically and intellectually, and maybe we'll come on to that, I'm sure, in a minute. Knowing stuff intellectually is one thing, and really integrating it and feeling it is another. Yeah. Practicing it.
Absolutely. And you appreciate what you have. We talk about this all the time, the gratitude. And I've been doing that with my daughter, talking about gratitude journals. She said, this is really good. It's really helping me. So we can do these things.
Brilliant. Mine poo-pooed it. Well, my son. Oh, this is ages ago. I should probably try again.
No, do you know what it was, though? It was because she came to me with a specific thing. And I said, why don't you start a gratitude journal? Because that will make you realise all the great things that are happening. And so I think it's about timing, and I think it's about the way it's about how they have come to you with an issue and you've solved the issue with the gratitude journal rather than saying, I think it's about time we had a gratitude.
Yes, come on, let's all be grateful. We used to do gratitude at dinner, actually, and that was quite nice. Yeah, maybe I'll bring that back.
I know I burnt it. Be grateful.
Yeah, exactly that.
Get your journal out and write it down.
Oh, yeah.
So we've said EQ is highly malleable.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you practice things, your brain reinforces the use of the new behaviors, and then you get new connections, and you can develop this to be a real habit.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes. So what do we do? What are the skills? Right. Number one, active listening. And we've talked about this right at the start when we were talking about the way we can talk to our kids and how we can listen to them to make it really work. Active listening is a key part of helping create genuine two-way communication. And it's about far more than just paying attention. It's learning to listen to what someone else is saying, look at their body language, and be able to demonstrate back to them that you've understood them. Yeah. So we've talked about this. We've talked about listening until you feel understood, LUFU, all those things. And this is something that you can coach your children in. So it can affect how students receive feedback in a classroom, for example, which is why it's really, really important. And
in a home, it gives a real sense. And I really experienced that with in my own home. It really gives a sense of respect. I'm really listening to you, and what you have to say actually is really important, and I want to hear it, even if it's something little. And then then they feel that they're being respected, and then they respect back, which is a big part of emotional intelligence.
Yes. And that's why what you said was so important, which is that we can model this behavior. Yeah. So when we active listen with our teenagers, we feed back to them what we think we're hearing so that they can verify whether we've got it right or not. It teaches them that this feels good. This is a benchmark to work towards. Yeah. And when they're getting feedback in the class where the teacher said, you did this, but this didn't work, rather than feeling, misinterpreting what's actually happening, they're able to take the feedback and listen to what's being said to them in a positive way.
And we can also then take it a step further, which we've also talked about, which is the feeding it back emotionally, which is obviously, by its very name, a part of emotional intelligence. Oh, that sounds really frustrating. Oh, that sounds really disappointing. Oh, that sounds really amazing. And then they link that to emotions and they go, oh yeah, it does. And then they explore that further, or no, it didn't actually. It felt really sucky or whatever. Then it's taking it deeper.
And what you've done is you've introduced words that they can use to then identify that specific feeling, which is, again, the vocabulary for feelings is really, really important. Yeah. And one suggestion I saw was that you can play a game, which is you start with A and you think of a feeling to do with A, then B, then C, right? That's a game. Yeah. That emotional wheel I talked about, which I love. Yeah. And the way you would use it is you can say, I'm feeling this. You look at the core feeling and try and look at where it is on the wheel, and then move outwards And you can compare your feelings. So I'm feeling this today, but yesterday I felt this. So it's trying to just summarize things. And the more chance they get to do this, the more articulate they will become.
The more they notice it, and they can also feel that that feelings change. They come and they go, and today I felt like that, and tomorrow I'll feel like that, maybe like that, and right now I feel like this. It's really important. And another way of going in, which is what's a big part of mindfulness, and I use with clients and at home, and is, we can go in through the head, which it doesn't always give us,
it's not very helpful,
correct information. It's often wrong. Or we can go in through the body, which feels a bit weird for most of us because we're chopped off. We are walking around as intellectual
vehicles
beings.
For the head.
And our bodies kind of follow with us unless we're doing exercise. And it's tuning in. Okay, what does anger actually feel like in my body?
I love that.
Actually, it feels like I get this kind of weird sensation in my chest, or my hands get sweaty, or my brow furrows. It's tiny little bits, and practicing what do they feel like in my body, so that when they come up, which they will, we're better at spotting them. And we just become emotional intelligence. And what does joy feel like in my body? What does anxiety feel like in my body? And they're all very different, and we usually have no idea until we tune in. It's really valuable.
Love it. And that's actually, again, it comes into the self-awareness. So the next one is developing self-awareness. Yeah. And this is slightly different. There's a Dunning-Kruger effect, which was named after researchers asked students how they thought they did in a test.
Okay.
And then they compared their perceptions with their actual results. And they found that, now I find this strange, most students actually overestimated their ability.
Yep.
And most likely, this was to be the case in students who had done poorly.
Yep.
So
sounds familiar.
And the point is that if you have low self-awareness, you're at risk of not realizing how you're going to come across and how well you're actually performing something.
Yeah, it can go the other way.
It can go the other way. And that's, because I always used to think I was doing worse than I actually was.
Yeah, that's the perfectionist,
whatever.
Isn't it?
And one way of improving this is to encourage your team to ask self-reflective questions, such as, what could I have done differently? So you take a scenario and they tell you what happened. And you say, because, Socrates used this, you just ask questions.
Yes.
You get people growing and learning by just getting them to think about the answers, not telling them.
Yeah.
Brene Brown, who we love, talks about sympathy and empathy, the difference. Do you have any definitions that you want to give us, or shall I just use the Brene Brown?
No, go for it. She says
that the difference is that sympathy drives disconnection and empathy drives connection. And sympathy is kind of when someone's in a hole. When someone's in a hole, if you're empathetic, you would climb into the hole with them and say, "Wow, it feels really dark in here."
Yeah.
It's the sympathy. Sympathy is where you look down into the hole and go, that doesn't look very nice.
Yeah, do you want a cup of tea down there?
Do you want a cup of tea? So it's a really good video. It's a really great video. I've put it in the podcast notes.
It's beautiful.
It's actually really worth showing it to your team because she says that this, I'm actually with my bonus daughter who had gone through a really horrific life event. There was the response of some people saying, well, at least it's... And Brene Brown points out, she says, if the sentence starts with at least, it's not going to be very helpful to someone who's really suffering.
It's well-intentioned usually, but it's to disconnect. And in addition to empathy is compassion.
Yes.
So empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, which is wonderful and really, really, really helpful. And then compassion is noticing that maybe there's some suffering there and wanting to help them and assist them in some way.
Yes, I like that. So we develop empathy by experiencing how others show it. Reading books is a very good way of, because then you're getting inside someone else's head. This is fiction. You're getting inside someone else's head and seeing the world through their perspective. But also things like using the phrases such as, I see, I understand, I don't know how that feels, but I can imagine it's being able to sit inside their shoes.
Yeah.
So it's just teaching them to use those sorts of words and just be comfortable with the discomfort that someone else is going through a really horrible time.
Yeah, and having the openness as well. If your team comes and says, and you think you know how it feels, and you say it, and they go, no, actually it doesn't feel like that. Oh, okay, well, how does it feel? Tell me, I'm here.
Yeah. And again, mirror, it's teaching them by behaving that way yourself.
Yeah, mirror.
Managing emotions and self-regulation. So the Sutton Trust states that helping students improve their self-regulation, which is the ability to manage your thoughts and feelings, is one of the most effective and efficient ways to support our students. And it's especially so when they're teenagers, this kind of impulse control time.
I mean, I always think, imagine if everybody could self-regulate. Imagine if everybody was taught self-regulation, nervous regulation. I bang on about this at home. My kids roll their eyes and stop listening. Imagine the world would look very different.
No, absolutely. And it's something to reach towards. Because teenagers tend to rely on their limbic system, which is their instinctive reactions, because the prefrontal cortex isn't developed.
Yeah.
And
because they haven't practiced it.
Yeah, they haven't practiced it. And in a test, adults were shown a picture of a person's face and had to choose whether the emotion expressed was fear, shock, or anger. All the adults correctly identified the look of fear, whereas only about half of the teenagers got the right answer.
Yes, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah. So what we need to know is that they may not be recognizing these emotions. No. They can practice in front of the mirror.
Yeah. And then we stick a label on them.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, they can't do that.
So the thing to do is to look at events as a good opportunity to try emotional regulation skills. So if they are in a tricky situation where they feel enraged or whatever, some of the techniques you talk about in terms of just grounding themselves and being able to, and then also picking out emotions on other people, because they may identify an emotion on someone else that's not correct and acts on that, which then escalates everything into an unpleasant situation.
A really important point. I'd forgotten that. That's really important. Like my daughter can sometimes get massively dysregulated, like with me particularly, which is completely normal.
Of course.
And she knows now, I have to remind her, like, we're not having this conversation now because your brain is actually offline. There's no point. And actually, the other day, she was having a wobbly and her brother was like, Mum, tell her off. That's not cool. Like, tell her off. Like, he needed me to tell her off. And I was like, there is no point right now. I will talk to her later. She cannot hear me. She cannot react. There's no point. It will just escalate further. So he also saw that and was like, oh, okay. And then saw me later having a conversation. But they're all different. And another point, which I think is really important, is some kids seem like they're maybe not so emotionally intelligent, whether they are or not. I think it's up to the individual. They can appear in one way and maybe they're not. Maybe they're more intelligent than you see. But some are super emotionally intelligent and are like sponges. I have one of those. And that is also helping them in a different way because my daughter, she wouldn't mind me saying this, she's a sponge and for years, and she's much, much better at it, which means her boundaries for taking in all of that are their holes. So she takes in everybody's stuff, all of it. And people come to her with issues. She's amazing with animals and kids and all of that. But she needs to learn how to block that out and to have boundaries within that. So she's not exhausted and left, with everyone else's rubbish thrown at her. So it does go both ways, and having an awareness of that's really important.
And you can have something in between where I've got a daughter who's extremely tuned into what's going on, but doesn't get it right all the time.
Yes.
So often she'll say, this person did this. And I say, yes, but it could have been this reason, not that.
Yes.
And it's just helping them understand that there are other ways and other reasons for the way people behave.
Yeah.
Just before we finish, that made me think of when I used to coach parenting, and I would play this game where there would be a forfeit.
Yeah.
And what was really funny was that a lot of people would want to see the forfeit enacted. And if I said, oh, you don't have to do it, the response was, wait a second, I wanted to watch that. and this is human nature.
Yeah.
This is human nature. People used to go to hangings used to be kind of like a big event.
Yeah.
So it's sort of understanding that we're curious. We're curious about how is this going to pan out? How is this sort of dealing with this bad behaviour going to work
true.
out?
That is so true.
Anyway, it used to make me laugh.
Yeah, we can also have a game. That reminded me as well as my eldest picks up other people's emotions very quickly, and I do as well. And we were walking somewhere, it was a few years ago, and I said, let's play a game. Like, people that walk past us, tell me how you think they are, how they're feeling. Tell me what you pick up.
I like that.
And he was like, okay, because I said, I know you do it. And he was like, how do you know that? Well, I know you. And we had this, and yeah, I think she's like this, like that. Yeah, me too. And we took it in turns. And then he was like, I thought everyone did that. I went, no. You can
love
practice
that.
it,
What
but you
a
just do
game.
it. It's really fun.
Yes.
It's really fun.
Yes, you could sit on a wall and just watch people coming by. I love
so
that.
if you find that difficult, you can practice it.
Brilliant. Yeah. Best tip.
Freaked him out a bit then. He was like, why do you know I could do that?
Well, this is it. They think no one's noticing. Yeah. Yes. So in essence, we have a really important role to play with our teens in helping tease out how they feel and find words for those feelings. If you found this topic useful, please go to the main page of the podcast and click follow and share. Tell your friends, tell the school, you can review us. Yes, please. It really makes a difference. And if you want to search through our old episodes, you can find them on our website, www.teenagersuntangled.com, where there are reviews and a blog and ways to contact us. We're also both on social media where you can message us at any point. Susie, you have your own website. Tell us.
I do. It is www.amindfullife.co.uk. And you can book a free chat on there with me if you so wish.
Yes, you had someone do it the other day.
I did.
Yes.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So lovely. So lovely to contact people. Yeah. You know, we sit here in a room chatting and it's so nice to kind of reach out to the outside world and meet everybody.
It is. And I offer all sorts of like mindfulness or therapy or
exactly. Exactly. Do it now. That's it for now.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.